Well, today's Thursday. The motor's not going to come out today. That was the goal. It's ready to come out just about. So I'm going to get the torque converter bolts. The Y pipe is loose from the exhaust manifolds. One side, the driver's side, came right off. You can tell they'd been replaced. They weren't even rusty. Like I said before, I believe the transmission was rebuilt, and that's probably when that was done. The passenger side, I had to cut them. Couldn't get my Sawzall in there. I ended up getting my little 3-inch cutter in there. I only had one wheel left, and it ground down to almost where I couldn't get it in there. But I got it in there, cut the bolts. So that's loose. I got to cut the 3 bolts where the Y pipe meets the torque converter, or the catalytic converter. So I had to buy another die grinder. Nothing I have will fit in there. The one bolt is up towards the floor of the truck, and there's just nothing that will reach it. So I bought a Chief brand from Harbor Freight today. It was only 35 bucks. I think that'll get in there, and I'll be able to cut it and grind it off with that, and it'll be done. So I'm thinking either tomorrow I'm going to run out to my dad's garage. He's got the cherry picker and engine stand out there, which are going to come here. I should have thought this out a little better, because I'm going to have to move some things to get that in here. But so I'm going to pull it tomorrow night or Saturday. And there's no rush anyway, but I was hoping to have it out by today. And I'm just going to put it on the ground on 2x4s. And when the new one comes, I'll put that on the stand and put it together. For some reason it's still dripping oil out of somewhere. Not that it's a big deal, just something I got to clean up before I get under there. But so I've got the Y pipe to take off. Once again, I'm going to try for the torque converter bolts at the flex plate. Got to take the drive shafts off, or at least unbolt them from the rear ends, and so I could slide the transmission back. I saw in a video, the Ford Tech video, he just unbolted the transmission mount at the cross member, or he unbolted the cross member, I don't remember. I'll have to look under there. And he just slid it back, and it'll go back. There's enough room to go back far enough to pull it away from the motor, and then I don't have to really try too hard to get the motor off of it. But either way, it'll work. I've got plenty of room to the cowl. I'm not even going to take anything off the cowl I was when I started, but my engine tilter will easily fit under there. But I'll get a video of that once I get it all bolted up. So anyway, here we go. I gotta go back underneath. It's always interesting what you find when you get a vehicle that's been changed hands a couple times. But here's this wire. Wire nuts. Wire nut there. I don't even know how many wire nuts there are. There's several. About 4, and they run all the way down. You can see where those 2 bolts sticking out, and all they are is a ground wire for these groat lights, amber lights that run the air dam. And they actually look like pretty expensive lights. I'm not replaying. I bought a new air dam. They cut holes in it to put it in, and they're all corroded. They actually look neat at night, I guess, but it's kind of funny how they did that. Why come all the way back here for a ground? I just thought it was interesting. And you can see this truck's in good shape for a Northeast truck. A little bit of surface rust under the bed. Everything's great. The only real rust is up by the steering box on the frame. It's not rotted, but it's probably the worst part of the whole thing. It's in really good shape. Somebody took care of it. Well, today's going to be a good day, I think. I lucked out. I didn't even have to put my die grinder on that upper bolt. It was so rotted, it just slipped right through. I'm talking about that one right there. So, and the other thing is take your paper off your cut-off wheels. But a little review of a tool, that Chief die grinder from Harbor Freight. Don't buy the cheaper one for like 10 or 15 bucks. That one was 34, and it works great. It had plenty of power. Didn't guzzle a lot of air. I mean, I'm sure a lot more than a Matco or a Snap-on, but I think it worked pretty good. So that's where I'm at with that. I can take the Y pipe off now. And another thing on that wire, they actually looped it all the way around over the transmission and back up to the front for a ground on the other side for the same lights. Those lights have their own plugs and harnesses. I've never seen anything like it. I'm not too familiar with marker lights or trailer lights, but it seems like a lot of effort just to run a ground. They just could have tapped the fender or something. But anyway, start to rethink pulling these drive shafts and sliding the transmission. I just think there's enough room to get the motor away from the tranny and get it out of there, but I don't know. I'm going to take a little bit better of a look at the cross member there at the oil pan. It looks pretty tight. Well, we'll see what it's going to take to get this transmission to move. Then I'll decide. Now that's where my exhaust leak was. I knew I had one. I always just assumed it was the exhaust manifold, but I don't know if you can see the black around that where the exhaust is leaking out, but the stud's still stuck in there. And that's what these things are. They're studs. It looks like there's some spline on there. Look close, so I could probably just smash it out of there, but I might just try to cut it down and see if it'll just fall out the rest of the way. But yeah, there's really nothing left of it. Alright, moving on. Alright, next up I'm going to get the starter out. And it's really... wires are really corroded, the starter's really corroded. I guess the only thing that saved this end of it from being corroded is all the oil leaking. So you get the starter, there's 2 bolts, I think, 10mm maybe, I'm not sure. And then there is a grounding strap right there. So you gotta take that off, get the starter out, wires off the starter obviously, and I think the motor is pretty much free from any wiring or pipes or hose and any plumbing. And like I said, I'm gonna take the oil filter off for sure, and I think I'm gonna pull the oil cooler. The more I'm looking at it, give myself a little more clearance over that cross member. Alright, trying to get these motor mount bolts off, and
and there were these 2 old hospital gurneys with these 2 little...
my 20 volt won't touch them, so you go get the air impact. Might even heat them up and get them off that way.
I never seen anything like that.
Another thing, back to this exhaust, it is a stud. I cut it flush, I'm going to have to drill it and try to knock it out, and probably heat that up too and knock it out. We'll see. Alright, today's the big day. I'm going to pull this motor out, hopefully. The only thing left holding it in are the bell housing bolts. Went to Fastenal today, had to buy a bunch of bolts for hold the motors to the engine stands. Went up my dad's garage and picked these up. My engine stands and a cherry picker, which will be in the way after this job's done. So hopefully where my dump pile now sits from all the renovations going on in this house, that's where a garage is going to go. Nothing huge, but enough to get things out of the way. I've got a 79 Z28 project that's been sitting around a couple of years, but that's for another day. So anyway, had to move some things around. Like I said, I'm short on space here, and I got enough room now. Get the cherry picker over there. I'm going to pull the bell housing bolts. It's a pretty warm day here in Northeast PA, but it is windy. Everything's blowing around, and of course it's garbage and recyclable day, so seems like that always goes hand in hand. But anyway, back to this. Motor's going to come out. There don't really have anything to strip off of it but the part of the oil cooler. I got the oil filter off. I honestly just didn't know how to take where the filter spins on, how to take the oil cooler off. I think it just spins on there. It'd only take me a second to look in the book to find out. But with the filter off, it looks like it's going to clear the cross member. I'm not going to slide the transmission back. I unbolted it. Loosened the mount bolts. I think if I put the jack under it, take some weight off it, I could slide it back maybe 1/4 of an inch. And I don't even think I have to do that because the flex plate, the torque converter bolts in the flex plate, they need about 1/4 inch to go, and I think I could easily pull the motor forward enough and clear the cross member and everything else and not have any issues with having to slide the transmission. That was just some advice I was given if I had to slide it backwards, because there was a little bit of room there, but we'll see when I get into it. So I'm going to pull the bell housing bolts and get it up in the air and start pulling it out of here. And after that, I'm really just going to let it sit till I get the alternator rebuilt. Not that it doesn't work, the bearing squeals in it. So I found a kit for 35 bucks. It came with everything. That's probably all they do when they rebuild them. I mentioned that before, but I'll get into detail when I do the video on it. Same with the power steering pump, just going to put new seals in it. There's nothing wrong with it other than it maybe leaks a little bit. So I'm going to clean it up, paint it, make it look pretty. And then I just have a lot of the old parts sitting here that I have either replacements for or replacements on their way. And I'm not going to throw anything out, of course, until I match everything up, like the AC hoses, all the radiator hoses, power steering hoses. There's a host of different ones for these vehicles. I shouldn't say a host, but there's two different. There's a Hydro Boost system that I don't know much about, but anyway, once I get it all out of here, then I'll know what I can finally get rid of and get out of the way. So that's where we're at. I'm going to hook the crane up here and get the bolts out of the bell housing, and hopefully the bolts I got it fastened all today will be enough to hold it to my engine stand. And we should be good. Then I'll start cleaning it all up, getting this stuff. We got this rubber piece here that ended up tearing when I was taking it out. I have some 3M adhesive that's supposed to work to hold it together. I know it's not a extremely crucial piece of the vehicle, but I like to make things look right. So I'm going to take care of that. And then I'm going to, the only place there's really rust on this truck is right here by the power steering pump. I don't know why, I can't explain it. But the hoses are all rotted. A little bit of rust on the frame. It's not really heavy rust. It's, I guess, more scaling, but I'm going to clean that up and spray it all with Eastwood's rust encapsulator. I've always had good luck with that. I'd use Power15 too. I don't know which one's better. I can only tell you which one costs less. So that's what I'm going to do, and clean it all up, make it look pretty, and order the new motor probably next weekend and get everything on it and go in reverse. I'll have a lot more video of it going back in. It's nice to work on clean new things, but we'll fall off that horse when we get there. Alright, it's out. Came out pretty easy too. Everything cleared. I didn't move the transmission. I might have to slide it back, make it easier to get it in, but that's it. The wire that goes across the top on the cowl. Move that, or it'll end up in pieces like this one. Right, Frank? And you definitely have to take the oil cooler off of it, at least just the part where the filter spins on. This is it. It's an Allen key, and it is 9/16, which I didn't have. So I just took 3 nuts on there, welded it, ground a little bit of weld off the side, and that was it. It came out fairly easy. There's grooves on here. There was no O-rings or anything, but I'll look into that a little further later on. But it's out. I'll just put it on a stand. Okay, the final determination. The transmission's definitely been rebuilt. It's a Jasper. It's got a Jasper tag. I don't think it has a lot of miles on it. Fluid's clean, doesn't smell, not discolored. So not that it had any issues. The transmission worked flawlessly anyway, but just nice to look things over as long as you're this deep into it. Motor's out. It's on the stand. It was tough to get a video of me pulling it out. My buddy was here, but he was helping me, and it was just, I don't have enough room to back the camera off. I had so much stuff here. So when it's going back in and everything's nice and clean, I'll get into a little more detail, and hopefully you pick something up that might help you out, or you can point something out to me that I did wrong. I certainly can take criticism. So, or maybe no one's watching. I don't know, but I like making these videos, so I'm going to keep making them, and I just hope I could help someone out. Real quick little advice. This is something I should have recorded, but here and here are where your heater, the metal heater tube, bolts on, and then the automatic transmission, the transmission dipstick comes up and bolts onto here too. So you got to take the nut off for that, pull that out of the way, and then remove the metal tube. It's just held on there, back of the water pump with O-rings, and the tube just comes through here, out to here, from there, right there, and it bolts on. And when the tube comes down, it runs right over where you're going to want to put your bolt in for the engine puller. Even if you're using the one from Ford, it may bolt onto the back. I don't know. I bolted mine through the front. The threads go right through. I think the Ford unit actually bolts onto the back. And you kind of got to, I think that's why it was recommended to me that you slide the transmission back. Well, I'm not using that tool. It's $300. I've got an OTC puller here that I'll get into in a second, because I was kind of knocking it because I was a little disappointed the box had made in China, but I'll talk about that in a second. The only other thing is save all your motor mount bolts. Even if you buy new motor mounts, not going to come with new bolts. I took a preemptive strike and bought new bolts for the power steering pump. I'm pretty experienced with changing them on these 5.4s or on these Ford trucks, and normally they break. Of course, I bought 4 new bolts. None of them broke. Oil cooler you're going to have to take off. There's 4 or 5 10mm bolts in the front, big stud in the back with a, I think it's a 15mm nut. I don't know if you need the stud or not, but you'll do a side-by-side comparison when you get your new motor. It was recommended to me to replace the part of the oil cooler, the actual cooler part where your filter spins on. I have a new one. I'm sure you could clean the old one out, but I don't know, for how cheap it is, I just bought one. The bolt for your dipstick tube. I bought a new Dorman tube because this one's rotted. So you're going to need that nut, or need that bolt rather, don't forget that. And that's pretty much it. What I had, oh, the other thing what I had to do to get this on the engine stand, the way it's pulled out using these two, and again, even if you use the and I believe OTC makes the tool, the Ford specific bar, or whatever they call it, it's just a solid bar, bolts into these two in the front, here and here, and it's a $300 tool, so unless you're going to do these things for a living, I sure as shit wasn't buying one. Bolts in there and there, bolts here and here. So I used the chain from I went down 4 links, put a bolt through the 4th link, ran them in from this side on the inside, and then of course those are a 10mm 150, and I'm not sure what these front ones were, but they were smaller, and I got lucky and just happened to have them. And these went in through the front, and they were grade 10 point somethings, I don't remember. But to get the engine stand on here, and I'll show this when I get the new motor, I actually had to drop the motor on the ground gently because I don't know if I'm going to need this oil pan or not. The new motor comes with an oil pan, but I guess there's different configurations, and if the oil pan it comes with doesn't work, I got to use this one. But set it down gently, it'll hold up. Then I had to pull my chains off the back, put this on, because you can't run these bolts in while there's ones coming in from this way. Then I just wrapped the chain around here, picked it up, put it on the engine stand, I was good to go. So that's just a little tip. Now to this engine tilter. It's an OTC. I know I knocked it because it came made in China. I'm not knocking China. I'm not that guy. I just have been disappointed with stuff that comes and it's made in China. And especially when it's something especially a company I've come to respect a lot and gives me quality tools when I don't give them away. But this thing was great. I guess it doesn't matter, it was made in China. It worked flawlessly. Swinging in the air, turning that crank. Alright, I'm doing a little inspection on this motor, and I was right. It's got a broken valve. I don't know if I can get it on my camera here. You could see it's actually missing right there. I try to get the camera straight. See a shiny part right at like 1 o'clock on the camera, or like 12 o'clock towards the intake. See a big piece missing out of it. There's a shiny part there, and then it's broken. So it was a intake valve. Again, I don't know if this is picking it up or not. I really wish I can get that on there better, but just catch the edge of it there. Alright, curiosity got the best of me and I pulled the head off. Well, Bobby and I pulled the head off. Mike did nothing.
Nope.
So it's broke.
I did something. I drank beer.
Big chunk out of it. It's probably worth putting heads on. Crosshatch is real good. Everything else looks good, but I'm not doing that. It's got 180,000 miles. So I'm still going with the reman. But there's the problem right there. Well, that and the plug that's stripped out of it. I don't know if one led to the other, but that's the end of it. Curtains.
I gotta call and see if you want to send them.
And I primered these up. They came out pretty nice. Well, red rust encapsulator.